Well, I shall proceed into my next presentation, which is the Mars Flyby. And regulars at Mars Society will remember some contests that the Society has held. Did anybody participate in the Mars Flyby competitions run by the Society? They did wonderful jobs, largely student-based, and what they did was they put together all the elements of how you do a Mars flyby. And it's a pretty beautiful concept. To start off, I hate to break it to you, but nobody's going to Mars for a long time, unless something changes pretty quickly. Public support for the space program is mile wide, but it truly is an inch deep. When I do radio shows, I've had people ask me questions like, what's NASA doing now that the space program's been canceled? Well, they don't really get the concept. I tell them, look up. We've got space station, we got rovers on Mars, we got commercial crew coming into being, we've got all sorts of really cool things floating around the solar system. Was it Cassini's doing her final swan song later this week, I think. We had incredible welcome, and thank you all for coming. We had wonderful pictures of Pluto. Who knew that? That surprised me. I expected just another gray, cratered planet, but no, Pluto is really, incredible, and even has a teeny bit of atmosphere and so forth. Things that, absent NASA, we just would never know. It would have remained a fuzzy gray blob on National Geographic photos forever. But in getting back to what I was starting with, the public doesn't really believe that we can do big things again in space. And that is a tragedy, but it's been brought about by delays, budget cuts, cancellations in deep space exploration over the years. Next slide. And the budget has basically been flat or almost flat for a very long time, and Congress's projections are to keep it flat, just going from here on out as far as you can imagine, or maybe a little 2.5% increase a year. And my belief is that's not really sufficient to get us to the moon or Mars or anywhere, really. If you look at NASA in the 1960s, what were they doing? They were going to the moon. We did a few other things, a few things we sent to Venus and Earth observation satellites and things like that, but largely NASA was the moon. In fact, there was a sign that hung all around NASA in the Apollo program, and I made a replica of it and put it on my website for downloading. And it just simply says, the moon. And that was hung up all over NASA. And, I can imagine folks coming in the morning and they grab their coffee and say, oh, what are we doing today? Oh, the moon. All right, let's get busy. And they had a purpose and so forth. Nowadays, and some of you heard my presentations on Wednesday, NASA's been, has a lot of things that it's doing now. And so the $19 billion of the NASA budget gets divided up many, many ways. So it's not all going into space station, rockets, and Mars. And so I believe that we need to advance beyond that. Next. Neil deGrasse Tyson, my organization, and only a very, very few others have ever supported Dr. Tyson's call to double the budget of NASA. Uh, you know, in the scheme of things, 1%, 1 penny on the dollar, is almost it's beer money, and so we have to break out of that. But right now, the climate's not there. It's not there in Congress, and in part that's because we're not doing big, bold, exciting things that drive students to knock down the doors of the STEM department and say, I want to be part of this. Now, we have that enthusiasm here, and go up the street a little bit to SpaceX and JPL, and they do too. But then you get out of that to the average American who thinks the space program's pretty cool, and their kids probably get you know, a little NASA hat or something and go visit Kennedy. But what have we had? Well, an asteroid mission. No, that didn't get people to beat down the doors to STEM, or people saying, you know, I want to do everything possible to get the asteroid mission. I'll mow the lawn, I'll paint the spacecraft, I'll pop a rivet on the launch gantry. No, it was kind of a sleeper. Welcome, have a seat, please. Plenty over here on this side. But why are we here? Probably everybody at this conference grew up thinking that in the future, you know, you expected then that we would have a space program now that takes us to the moon and Mars, the cities on the moon, and so forth. That's what I grew up, and probably pretty much everybody does, thinking, oh my gosh, in 15, 20 years, you know, there's going to be cities on the moon and Mars, and you know, I'll be able to buy a ticket and so forth. But what happened? Again, we're in a bit of a space slump, but there is a way to help get out of that. Next, please. And again, I was present when Dennis Tito, who is the first, I believe, private astronaut, came to Congress, because I was working in Congress then for the person who represents the Johnson Space Center. So I was his space advisor, and so Dennis Tito came to our office and sat down with us and talked about his idea, which was Inspiration Mars, a flyby around Mars. Originally that was going to be in 2018. Another window is in 2021. Obviously we're not going to launch anything in 2018 to Mars with people on it. But I saw the magic in the flyby. Next. This is from, I think, last year, the Mars Flyby competition sponsored by the Mars Society. And we've had a few more people come in. Is there anybody that participated in that competition? Well, at any rate, they deserve your applause. And if you meet any here, thank them very much, because they did what NASA could do. NASA's planning for a flyby in the 2030s, just a flyby, and then, you know, landing in 2040s, 50s, 60s, whenever. But this is something we can yank out of the 2030s and do it in the 2020s. Want to give me the next? Oh, that was a bill that I wrote to allow the then privately organized Mars flyby to get all the cooperation it needs from NASA. Next. But the Mars flyby concept, it will pave the way for re-energizing the public. And what's it take? One rocket, maybe two, one transfer stage, one capsule, one transit habitat to go and stretch your legs in, 2 astronauts, but an incredibly inspirational adventure that'll rivet everybody in the world to to what's happening, because for the first time ever we would have humans going and looking down really close on Mars, and if we do the 2021 launch window, it goes by Venus on the way. It's one of those late night TV specials, you know, but act now. If you act now, we'll throw in Venus too at no extra cost. And give me the next. This is the Mars-Venus trajectory, and it first goes in about 115 days, I think, flies by Venus, and then about day 350 or something, then it flies by Mars and then comes back. It's, I think, a 584-day journey. This president likes to shake things up. If you caught my presentation on Wednesday, you know, I was talking about what I think we'll see from the president in this administration. He likes to shake things up. What's the slogan? Make America Great Again. Well, what better way to make America great again and demonstrate it to the world and everybody, down to a 6-month-old kid who's saying, I want to go to space or whatever, is to do great things in space. This is easily doable. You can do it with an SLS. You could do it with a couple of Falcon Heavies. So it uses existing rockets, designs and so forth. A Bigelow or Cygnus could serve as the habitat along the way. And so it's quite doable. It's something this administration could say, okay, we're not doing the asteroid mission. Nobody liked that. And hopefully they'll say, let's not do the Deep Space Gateway either. And they'll say, well, let's do this because this will really inspire the heck out of people. Why don't you give me the next? This is a little bit of info on the 2021, where we had, you know, we've got, I guess, about 4 years of preparation time. But we did Apollo in 8 years from scratch, and we didn't know what we were doing. We had to invent everything. The rockets, the designs, the materials, everything, train people for things that we had no idea on, and we learned and learned. Well, now we pretty much know how to do it. But having the opportunity for a Venus flyby is the beautiful freebie. Beyond that, then there's, with every launch window, there is a what's called a free return flyby that takes about 700 days, so it's a little bit longer. But you don't even need to fire up your phone to do the math. Once you're in that orbit, it just takes you on a wonderful lazy tour around the solar system. You'll get, I don't know, about 500 million frequent flyer miles, and reliably come straight back no matter what happens. Kind of like with Apollo 13, it did that loop around the moon and without propellant, and that's how they're able to get back safely. Give me the next. And doing the flyby as NASA proposes in 2013, well, yeah, that should 2033. That should make us angry when we have the ability to do it today. Within the next number of years. Next. I briefed the White House on this. That's a copy of my plan, which is on my website, savemanspace.com, and suggested that the flyby be the replacement for the asteroid mission, and as well as not doing the Deep Space Gateway, which, as Dr. Zubrin said last night, if you want to go to Mars, go to Mars. If you want to go to the moon, go to the moon. You don't need a truck stop up there just collecting tolls and serving up fresh coffee, that then you have to refuel that and resupply that. So it would just add an extra level of complexity. Next, please. If you take your phone and you smash it into 1,000 pieces, each piece you pick up has more computing power than Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's lunar lander. That's how far we've advanced. This is an app, an orbital mechanics app, and literally you could run a lunar lander, you could run the Mars flyby and all these things on your phone. So it's kind of like, why don't we? Why don't we? So let me give you a couple-minute video showing it. Next, please. And this is the Mars flyby. There's no audio. And you can see it launches. There's the planets going. The green line is that first leg, which is about 115 days long, I believe. It catches up with Venus. And then you get a view kind of like this. This is what they would see with their own eyes, and what, I don't know, about 7 billion people would be watching on their phones, as for the first time, people are looking at Venus really, really, really close up. And then it's back to catch up with Mars. And this is long. This is a couple hundred days, goes out, I think, about day 350 or thereabouts. So about a year to go out to grab Mars. Meanwhile, what are they doing? Well, of course, they're kind of lonely and bored because there's not a lot to do. But they will be doing whatever science they can. And my belief is that they'll be releasing a swarm of CubeSats at both Venus and Mars. So if we do this, build a CubeSat. Find out what would they would be useful or something, and here comes the Mars flyby, and this is kind of what they would be seeing. And this really dips low. It goes low. So it's not like looking out from the space station. I forget what it was, 50 miles or something up. And then it's a long return home, 580 days. But they'll want to talk to you. And I'm sure there'll be apps. You can, hey guys, how's it going? And they'll tell you all sorts of stories. But they'll probably be doing an awful lot of science too. Plus, what is this really? What is the Mars flyby? It's the Apollo 8 of Mars journeys. So we did that, and on Apollo 8, we validated the fact we can get to the moon, and we can get back safely. And this will force, again, yank from the 2030s into the 2020s, all the elements that we need, the closed loop life support, say that 10 times quick, ECLIS, all of the, a transit habitat, everything else, it'll force us to do it now. And that alone is worth quite a lot. So let me have the next slide. This is Paragon Space Development Corporation, which is Dennis Tito's. They are one of the leading edge folks on life support. That's a photo of their life support lab, and I keep in touch with those guys. They're great guys, and if we ever do get Flyby going, they'll probably have some of their things on there. But life support is probably the greatest challenge. Again, rockets, we know how to do that. A habitat, well, that's called the space station. We're just doing a little shrunken version. But life support, 700 days. You're out there. There's no Amazon delivery yet, and so forth. And yes, yesterday's coffee is today's coffee, and tomorrow's, and tomorrow's, and tomorrow's. But oh my God, imagine the billions of people watching this and saying, I want to be part of this. I want to go to Mars. Because suddenly, it'll be real again to Americans and people all around the world that we can actually go. Right now there's that disbelief factor. Well, you know, we did great things, but what are we doing now? Not a lot. We can't even, you know, land on the moon or on Mars. We're going to have this deep space gateway detour, and that'll waste another decade. Those who did participate in the Mars Society and in the Flyby design competitions, they'll understand how inherently simple it is. Now, it's not necessarily safe, it's not necessarily cheap, but the elements are very easy to put together. And like I said, this president likes to shake things up. So I would say we do have a possibility of getting something like this actually, when you give me the next one, actually considered seriously in NASA. So it's better to do a Mars flyby now in the 2020s to validate and accelerate the development of Mars transit, the Mars transit element, and then we'll have that down. Nobody will be able to say, oh, that's going to take another 20 years before we can learn how to go to Mars. No, we'll have it. So then we can concentrate on the other half, which is landing on Mars and living on Mars, and more and more people going. In closing, I'd say tonight, go outside, look up at the sky. Maybe you'll see Mars. You know, imagine it's just a few years in the future, and our astronauts are on their way to Mars. Not on the deep space. There we go. They're going there, they're looking out with their eyes, and their cameras are showing you what they're seeing, and their oohs and ahs of, oh my God, it's better than we thought, are echoing around the world. So let's make that dream into a reality. Call the White House, call your congressman, write letters to the editor, make posts go viral in support of it, and not that deep space gateway. If we all work together and succeed, then let's meet again at the launch pad and wish the astronauts bon voyage. And then we can get humans to Mars much faster. We got a few minutes for questions. Yes?
Yes, does Dennis Tito still think there's a possibility to pull off his project in 2021?
His? Yes. No. In early 2013, when I was talking with him, and he was proposing an entirely, give me another slide, and he was proposing a totally private venture. He said, I'll put up $300 million. But then he failed to get the other $700 million. He thought he could raise that, but he wasn't able to. Then, later in 2013, towards the end, then he was back promoting it to NASA as a largely NASA project. And I, you know, me and my boss, we were highly supportive, because whether it's done privately or done as a replacement for the asteroid or the deep space, it is the thing that really can get people inspired. We've got a lot of time for more questions. Sure.
One idea that's been kicked around on a very long duration mission like this is to have the crew do a recreational EVA just to, for crew morale to really bore them.
Mm-hmm.
If the crew were to do an EVA actually during the flyby rather than just look out of the window, that would be some amazing, you know.
I love that. Yeah, you're not looking out a window. You're actually looking. It's like, I love the idea. Thank you so much. I'll mention it to people, and if they can get a surfboard, hang 10. All right, in the back.
Could we include a lander on that flyby, just in case the astronauts want to be pulled?
The moon is a harsh mistress.
50 miles, and we're going to take pictures of Mars, which we've already seen.
Well, this would be nice, but as a practical matter, the velocity's too great. You're just doing a flyby. It goes zoop, just like we did with Pluto. And but I do believe that if we do this, there will be CubeSat swarms that'll go out, maybe with a little retro boosters, and go into orbit, or they'll do their own flybys, or they'll enter the atmosphere and report data back as long as they're able, or they'll just hang out there playing your favorite music, you know, to the stars and heavens and whatever aliens might be out there listening. Questions? Sure.
The obvious alternative is to orbit Mars. Did you look at that too?
Well, yes, and NASA's looked at that, and lots of people have looked at that. This is simply easier. It's something that you can do with a lot less stuff because you don't need to brake, you don't need to go into actual orbit. It's free return, so if there's any problems, you just keep going, just just like Apollo 8. So for the starter mission, it's a beautiful thing. And then, obviously, once we've done that, then it would be only one more step up the staircase of difficulty to say, okay, the next one we do goes into orbit for a period of time. And then, then you're validating that part of the voyage. And then boots on the ground. Huh?
That's the progression that Apollo did.
Exactly, yeah, and it makes total sense on a gradient scale from simple, it's why you rode a tricycle before you rode a bicycle, before you drove a car, before you flew a plane, and all of that. Is our next person here yet? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, you still got
Okay, cool. Sure, yeah, any more questions? Yes, in the back?
How many tons of air, oxygen is needed per individual to make a flight like that?
I've seen the specs on that. I've got, they had the whole architecture of it. It's figure a Cygnus module that carries cargo up to ISS, packed with food and water and recirculating stuff. And did you know something on that? No. Oh, okay. So it's totally manageable. On one SLS launch, you can do it. On probably 2 Falcon Heavies. And one that takes the Transhab up there, another one that does the capsule. Anything else? Well, thank you all so very, very much. I appreciate it.